Hello, students. I wish I was looking at you in our class, but I'm excited to share a new project with you. Mrs. Mauck and I have changed the format of what we're going to be doing for art through the end of the school year. We are going to be presenting projects that you can do together at home. So these projects are going to be geared for kindergarten through sixth grade. And each of us will be presenting the project with some modifications depending on your age. So this particular project is geared specifically for third through sixth, but all of the projects this week will focus on Earth Day. You can see here that our goal is going to be to create an illustration that shows the parts of nature that are especially meaningful and important to you. And we're hoping that your art really shares a story about who you are and what you care about. For those of you that may need reminding about Earth Day, it falls on April 22nd of every year. And it's an opportunity for us to really be grateful for the beauty and the ways that nature resources serve us. I don't know about you, but right now, being inside a lot, I really enjoy the time I have to go outside, take a walk, hang out in the sunshine. So I hope that you're doing that too. So let's take a look at what the focus of our project is going to be. You probably remember the elements of art from our classroom. They're right up front, right alongside the principles of art. And these are tools that artists use when they make their pieces of artwork. Artists usually use a combination of different elements and principles, and they often emphasize certain ones. So for this particular project, we're going to be looking specifically at the use of line, shape, and space. The vocabulary that I would like to just remind you of relates specifically to the use of space. And we talked about this earlier in the class at the beginning of the year during the fall when we made a pumpkin patch drawing in your sketchbook. And we talked about how space artists use space to create the illusion of depth in their artwork. So even though it's a two-dimensional flat surface like a piece of paper or a canvas, it appears to be something that is 3D that you could almost step into and experience. When we make a piece that is focusing on space, we'll often add a horizon line. If you remember from our conversations in class, that is typically where the sky meets the land and sea, or if we're doing a still life drawing, maybe that's where the wall might meet a table. The space is divided into three areas, and you can see there's an illustration here, a diagram, and also a photograph. The objects that appear in the front or the foreground tend to be the largest, the most detailed, and the clearest to see because they are just close-ups. You could see here, there's a tree in the front of this diagram, and in this photograph, there's rocks. You can definitely see the detail on those as well in the foreground. Now, right behind the foreground is what we call the middle ground. The middle ground is often the largest part of a drawing or a piece of artwork. You can see it here in this gray area on the diagram. And we talked about when we did our pumpkin patch, you can see it here too, that objects will often appear larger toward the front of the middle ground and then get smaller toward the horizon line or toward the background as well. And then finally, you see the background way off in the distance. You'll notice here that it's lighter in color. The image of the tree is less distinct. And in the seascape here, you can also see the clouds where they meet the horizon line there. is also the background. So we want to think about that as we make an Earth Day themed project. We want to be aware of it having a horizon line. We want it to have some objects in the foreground, middle ground, also in the background. And then we want to think about the size of those objects being larger toward the front, smaller toward the back. You'll also notice here in this diagram that there's also some use of overlapping. So these hills kind of overlap each other, and that also can help create the illusion of something being 3D. All right, the materials that you're going to need are pretty simple, and that's something that Mrs. Mauck and I are working on, is creating projects that you can do if you only have like a pencil and paper, or maybe marker too, or some of you guys really have access to a lot of materials, which is awesome. So either way, you're going to be able to complete this project. So first of all, you're going to need pencil, paper, and a circular object to trace. You can also choose, because this project focuses on the earth and being environmentally minded about what we do, you can also consider doing what's called upcycling. And that's taking something that might be intended for the trash, like a piece of cardboard or a cereal box, and instead transforming it into something that is artistic and useful. If you do have access to something that you could color with, crayons could work for this program or project, markers, colored pencils, oil pastels, regular chalk pastels, watercolor, acrylic paint, any of those things could be used. Now, something that I'd like you to do, similar to our projects in class, is to do a little bit of thinking before you jump into your project. So you could actually stop this video if you'd like, or you could complete this step just on a piece of scrap paper after I'm done explaining it. But I'd like you to think about some moments that you've had in nature that have been really meaningful to you. This also could include specific objects. So maybe you've had just a really lovely moment on the beach, or maybe up in the mountains. Perhaps you found something like a really beautiful shell, or a tree that you thought was really interesting. So I'd like you to list maybe 3 to 5 different moments or objects that you've held or experienced in nature, and jot those down. Those are going to serve as some inspiration for our project. Now you're going to have 2 different options, and I'm going to actually be creating demo videos where you can watch me making these. So this is just kind of an overview of your options, and then you could select one or both of the different projects. That part is up to you and how much time you have set aside to be creative this week. So the first option is a circular composition. You can see just a simple black and white example over here. And this is going to show kind of a landscape of one of the places that's meaningful to you. It doesn't have to be exactly photorealistic. It could include elements from multiple places that you've been to. Now, if you don't prefer to have this in a landscape format, it could also just be full of different objects or different pieces of landscapes as well. We're going to be thinking about composition, and that just means how you kind of organize your art, the layout of your art. Now, a second piece of art is actually a great overlap between science and art. And this is focused more on scientific illustrations. I'm actually going to introduce you to an artist who created this piece. But this is going to be, as an alternative, a set of related objects that are drawn and colored if you choose. So for the first option, you would just need a piece of paper or the surface that you're going to upcycle. We're going to be doing a big circle, and then we'll be going through the steps to create a landscape. Some examples might look like this. This is the one that I referenced before, but you can see some other similar examples, watercolored here, another watercolor with a quote, and then some that are more free form, not structured like a traditional landscape per se, but include lots of different elements from nature. So that is option one. Option two is inspired by a really interesting artist, Gregory Blackstock. You can see him here pictured with this really large piece of art that shows beetles. Let's take a look at a few facts about him. So he was born and lives in Seattle, Washington. He would be considered kind of like a folk artist, or an artist who is self-taught, someone who is very successful but did not go to art school and is really not thinking about art maybe in a traditional way. He has a very vivid visual memory, and so he's really interested in biology, and he creates a number of these illustrations called taxonomies. A lot of times what he chooses to draw will also have a personal meaning to him, and that's something that we're trying to emphasize in this piece, is that it connects to you and your experiences. For that project, you also would need a surface that you would like to do your artwork on. Again, it could be paper, could be cardboard. You're going to think about a particular natural object to focus on. So for example, it could be flowers, or maybe it's mushrooms, or rocks or stones if you're interested in those. And you're going to be doing a little bit of research and finding a number of different examples of that item from nature. Then you're going to be turning it into a piece inspired by this artist. So let's take a look. He's got the beetles that we talked about before, parrots of the world, some different pumpkins, lilies, piranhas. And you can see, again, these are illustrations done and then filled in with the color of your choice. So that is the end of this basic overview and presentation. So what you're going to do at this point is select the project that you would like to complete. You can go back in this presentation to see the materials that you'll need. And then you're going to watch one or both videos where you watch me make a sample that hopefully will help to instruct and inspire you. There's also going to be a flip grid available where you can show us your artwork and maybe give us some background, part of the story of what inspired your work. I am so looking forward to seeing what you create. And I hope that you always feel free to reach out, to email me, connect. I really care about you guys, and I'm looking forward to seeing your work. Thanks so much.